نعم حبيبي.
I've got a hypothetical question here. In surrogate mother, where the sperm comes from man and put in the lady's womb.
Sure.
She's the surrogate mother, and the father.
Who's the father?
The father is the one who donates the sperm in the modern time, but the person when he's born becomes a Muslim. What is
the question what we asked is a very good question actually. The question that we should ask: are we allowed to induce our women, our Muslim women, with sperms that are not from the husband? The question is, so easy English, is the woman, the Muslim woman, allowed to accept the injection of a sperm that is not her husband? No. Not acceptable. That is not acceptable in Islam. So that nullifies the situation completely regarding the question. Let us say it does happen. Then the other question comes where a lady, for example, is raped. Correct? And she carries or conceives, becomes pregnant. Is she allowed to abort the child? What do the scholars think?
They said yes in the first 3 months.
Who said yes in the first 3 months?
What I read,
What about your opinion, Nazari? Would you allow, for example, a female relative under your responsibility to abort the child from rape? The strongest or the most preponderant opinion after full analysis in this area is, once pregnancy is positive, you are not allowed to touch a child. And we are going to look at that further, inshallah. وَلَا تَقْتُلُوا أَوْلَادَكُمْ مِنْ إِمْلَاقٍ. Do not kill your children because of poverty. We will have a look at that, inshallah ta'ala, touch on it a little bit in our coming lesson, and that will be the third commandment. Whether we are allowed or whether we are not allowed, and what the scholars have said very briefly, in a nutshell, because there's a lot spoken about it, but with little evidence. And just briefly, the scholars have said, one opinion is that you are allowed to abort in the first 3 months. Some said the first 120 days, the first 4 months. While others have said, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. Once pregnancy is positive, leave that child. Come not near that child. Killing that child is killing a human being, even though the soul has not yet been blown into the womb. Because when the semen, when they meet together, the sperm, what happens? They're still, when it works, when it's positive, it becomes a little flesh of blood. And yet the soul is not blown into this. So some scholars have said that at this time, due to a lifeless entity or essence, you are allowed to carry out a miscarriage. You are allowed to abort the child. But the reality of the matter is, once they've met, the life has initiated. Otherwise, there'll be no meeting. Once this has met, the reality of the matter is, life has begun. And Wallahu A'lam, the most predominant, preponderant opinion is, don't touch that soul. Don't touch that life. And inshallah ta'ala we'll have a look at that in the future. Let us say our beloved brother was asking the question. We haven't completed it yet. Pregnancy has occurred. She's kept the child. He's a child of rape, of illicit intercourse. What happens to the child? Or he could be a child of haram sexual behavior, correct? What happens to the child? The father is known. He is recognized. What happens to that child?
It's the mother's child. Isn't it?
Yes. He is attributed to the mother. The father that committed the haram is not his real father. Not even considered his father. The child in this area is attributed to the mother. Is that understood? And inshaAllah ta'ala, yes, he becomes a Muslim, strengthen him. He's like any other child. He is an innocent soul. It's not his fault or her fault that what happened. And the poor fella, in reality, is like an orphan. He becomes like an orphan. He has got no father. And that is the reality of Islam. Alhamdulillah, that is to warn us against any illicit sexual